Not far from Salzburg is the sleepy little town of Braunau am Inn, and it was here on the morning of April the 20th, 1889, around about 6:30 p.m, Adolf Hitler was born, in an inn called the Gasthof zum Pommer. As a child, like most kids, he liked to play war games and cowboys and Indians, and he attended a Catholic school located in an 11th century Benedictine cloister, where, as a matter of interest, the walls were engraved with crests containing the symbol of the swastika. At 8 years old, Hitler took singing lessons, sang in the church choir, and even entertained the fantasy of one day becoming a priest. He did extremely well at primary school. He was also popular with other pupils and was much admired for his leadership qualities. Hitler was very attached to his mother, though he had a troubled relationship with his father, who frequently beat him. He wanted his son to follow in his footsteps as an Austrian customs official, and this became a huge source of conflict between them. Hitler wanted to go to classical high school and become an artist.
Munich was the city where Adolf Hitler created the Nazi Party, and I wanted to visit as many of the locations connected to it as possible, to try and get a better understanding of a man who became the epitome of evil and had, up to that point, been a lazy, bigoted, racist, malcontented good-for-nothing.
In May 1913, Hitler moved to Munich. Moving to Munich helped him escape military service in Austria for a time, but the Munich police eventually arrested him. After a physical examination and contrite plea, he was deemed unfit for service and allowed to return to Munich. However, when Germany entered World War I in August 1914, he petitioned King Ludwig III of Bavaria for permission to serve in a Bavarian regiment. This request was granted and Adolf Hitler enlisted in the Bavarian army. He was twice decorated for bravery. He received the Iron Cross Second Class in 1914 and the Iron Cross First Class in 1918. Yet because the regimental staff thought Hitler lacked leadership skills, he was never promoted to corporal. According to Weber, Hitler's first-class Iron Cross was recommended by Hugo Gutmann, a Jewish list adjutant. In 1916, he was wounded in either the groin area or the left thigh during the Battle of the Somme, but returned to the front in March 1917. He received the wound badge later that year. On the 15th of October, Hitler was admitted to a field hospital temporarily blinded by mustard gas. He was praised by a number of his commanding officers for his bravery. On leaving the army, Hitler took up residence in this building in the middle-class district of Thiersstrasse. Hitler chose a furnished sleeping room 2 flights up in the rear of the building. The room was only 8 feet wide by 15 feet deep, with a single window opposite the door.
His landlord at the time said he liked Hitler well enough and they would often chat, and even though he was Jewish, Hitler didn't seem to regard him any differently. The Hotel Torbrau first opened its doors in 1490. That's 2 years before Columbus discovered the New World, but it was almost totally destroyed on December the 17th, 1944, when it was bombed by Allied bombers. And it was here at the Hotel Torbrau where the SA and the SS recruited and drank throughout the 1920s, and also where the SA swore allegiance to Hitler and the SS was established in the basement in 1925. It couldn't have been a very impressive scene when on the evening of the 12th of September 1919, Hitler attended his first meeting of the German Workers' Party in a room at the Sternecker Brau, a Munich beer keller. Hitler wrote, "In the evening when I entered the Lieber room of the former Sternecker Brau in Munich, I found some 20 or 25 people were present, chiefly from the lower classes of the population. Hitler listened to the speeches quietly while observing the crowd until one of the speakers, a Bavarian separatist, proposed the cessation of Bavaria from the German Reich and a union with Austria. This brought Hitler to his feet in a fury, and he spoke with such vehemence that when the meeting was over, the party leaders invited him to join the party." Hitler joined the party in January 1920, and he was listed as member number 555, when in actual fact he was member number 55. The party had started listing people from number 500 to make it look like they had more members. Later on in Mein Kampf, Hitler wrote that he was member number 7, which would have made him a founder member, but that was a lie. On the 24th of February 1920, Hitler organised the first of many large publicity and propaganda events to be held at the Munich Opera House, and he presented a 25-point programme of ideas which were to be the basis of the party. The name of the party was changed from German Workers' Party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi for short, on April 1st, 1920.
The Löwenbräu Keller, located on Nymphenburger Strasse 4, was another favourite location of early Nazi Party meetings and speeches, and it was here that Hitler said, "I am the hardest man that Germany has had for decades, perhaps for centuries. I am equipped with the greatest authority of any German leader. Above all, I believe in my success. I believe in it unconditionally. I'm convinced that Providence has brought me this far and has spared me from all dangers in order to let me lead the German people." Hitler frequented several Munich restaurants, guest houses and cafes, particularly in the late 1920s and early 30s, before security was an overriding issue. One of his earlier haunts was the Schelling Salon on Schellingstrasse 56, although it's been reported that he stopped going after the owner refused to extend his tab. But perhaps Hitler's all-time favourite, which he continued to patronise even after the beginning of the Second World War, was the Osteria Bavaria, located on the corner of Schellingstrasse and Schraudolstrasse near the Nazi Party offices. Hitler's favourite seating area was in the back room on the right as you walk in, at a table facing the front windows. In the early days of the party, Hitler also frequented the Café Heck and its beer garden in the Hofgarten off the Odeonplatz. The restaurant is still in business today, and its tree-shaped beer garden is a popular spot on Sunday afternoons. The Nazi Party offices moved to Corneliusstrasse on the 12th of November 1921, and the party offices were located here during the infamous Putsch.
It was here on the right-hand side of the Feldenhalle where the Nazi Party made its first real attempt at taking over the country. On the 9th of November 1923, Hitler and some 2,000 Nazis
marched through Munich to gain support. They were stopped by the police at the War Memorial at the Feldherrnhalle. The Nazis hoped the army and police, many of whom supported right-wing parties, would join them in a march on Berlin. The police didn't support them. Shots were fired, and the marchers were routed. Hitler fled from the scene. 4 policemen and 16 Nazis lost their lives.
Consequently, Feldenhalle on the Odeonplatz became the spiritual centre of Nazism. And when the Nazis did come to power, they held a lot of rallies here, usually to commemorate those who'd fallen in the 1923 Putsch. There's a photograph of Adolf Hitler attending a rally in the Odeonplatz to celebrate the declaration of war in 1914. It was taken on August 2nd.
The infamous failed attempt at taking over the country started at the Bürgerbrau Keller on the evening of the 8th of November 1923. Hitler made this speech, and note how quiet and gentle his voice is at the beginning.
Ich kann den heutigen Abend nicht schließen, ohne Ihnen wie immer noch zu danken für Ihre treue Anhänglichkeit die ganzen langen Jahre hindurch und ohne Ihnen zu versprechen, dass wir auch in der Zukunft
I cannot end today's evening without, as always, thanking you for your loyal following throughout those long years, or without promising you to hold up high our old ideals in the future. We shall stand up for them, and we shall not shrink from putting our lives on the line to realize the program of our movement. That program which demands nothing but to secure our people's life and existence in this world. This is the first commandment of our National Socialist profession of faith, and it is also one which hangs over every National Socialist when, after the fulfillment of his duties, he departs this life. Party comrades, to our National Socialist movement, to our German folk, and above all to our victorious Wehrmacht. Hitler served 9 months in Landsberg prison from April 1st to December the 20th, 1924. He was in moderate health and stood 175 meters high and weighed 77 kilos. While he was there, he wanted for nothing, lived in relative luxury, studied his oratorical skills, and dictated his book Mein Kampf. After Hitler's release, the Nazi Party moved to this building on Schellingstrasse 50, just around the corner from his favourite restaurant, the Osteria Bavaria. And within 10 short years, Adolf Hitler was absolute ruler of Germany, and ready to put his plan of world domination and the extermination of an entire race into action. Many of the sites connected to Hitler's Munich still exist, but almost none attest to the fact, as with the building on Thiesterstrasse 11 to 17, just a short walk from where Hitler had lived after the First World War. It was in this building that Mein Kampf was printed and published. The Haus der Deutschen Kunst Museum of Art on Prinz-Regentstrasse was opened on the 18th of July 1937 by Adolf Hitler, but the only things still visible of its Nazi connections are the mosaics on the ceiling with the swastika clearly represented on its borders. However, one very important location has, after much consideration, chosen to inform the general public of its connections to the Nazi Party by placing information boards with photographs of the war and the resulting atrocities and war crimes outside the surrounding area. You'll find these around the Führerbrau on Königsplatz. The Führerbrau was where the Munich Accords were signed in the early hours of the 30th of September 1938, and which resulted in Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, making his famous deluded peace in our time speech. Hitler's office where the Accords were signed is blocked off, but the rest of the building is now, ironically, a music school. Walking from the Löwenbraukeller down Riennerstrasse, you'll approach the monumental Königsplatz, which is just in front of the Führerbrau and where Hitler staged many of his mass rallies. Standing in the main square, even on a cold, dark December evening, it's easy to understand how a nation of people who had literally been on the breadline could be taken in by their surroundings and the pomp and pageant that the Nazi Party was so adept at displaying. Walking in Hitler's footsteps somehow makes the horrors and the atrocities of the Second World War real. And these monuments should stand as a testament for all time to those who suffered and died at the hands of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party.